Well, hey, fellas. You know, I got done with that video, and there was one aspect of it when I went ahead and I reviewed it. I got it uploaded. There was one aspect of it that I wanted to make sure that I made clear. Okay, is that if you do have an adjustable trigger that's adjustable, that has a little screw in front up here, or if you do this modification to a pistol, okay, we're empty still. Okay, there's nothing in there. Okay, one of the things that negligency, okay, is my excuse here. I totally forgot. Is that when you have the trigger, engaged on the hammer hooks, okay, when you pull the trigger, you want to make sure that you have enough clearance, okay? You have enough clearance so that the sear, okay, and the hammer hooks do not drag. You don't want those two surfaces dragging on each other. So when you adjust the trigger, okay, so you get the trigger back like this, and you got your little Allen wrench in there, and you go ahead and you adjust the trigger. When the hammer breaks, okay, when the hammer breaks from the sear, you want to give it a little bit more room, okay, because what you want is you want to make sure that those two engaging areas, you know, don't make contact and rub, okay? That surface area right there. And that was another thing I wanted to, get into a little bit on this video. All right. I can only speak from my experience. I'm not telling you what to look for. I'm not telling you that any of this makes sense. I'm not telling you that this is what you have to look for, or you have to go out and pay somebody to do, or anything like that, or even attempt to do yourself. However, I've looked at a lot of different 45s in my life. Some of them are real old school, like, Giles pistols and Shockey pistols, Bob Chow pistols, the Clark pistols. Okay, these guys were inventors. Okay, they understood the relationship of all these moving parts within the 45, and they tried to improve upon them. And some of them worked, some of them didn't. Okay, so what I want to do, so I got my little angle block here. This is a tool that an armorer uses, okay, to set up the angle and inspect the relationship, okay, between the sear and the hammer. Now I have a brand new sear and a hammer. These aren't expensive. They're not expensive parts. Matter of fact, I think that's MGW. It's not a really expensive hammer. However, what I want to do is I'll set it up in my block here. And what this does, got that backwards. All right. What this does, this allows, the pistol smith to see the relationship, okay, between the hammer hooks right there and the sear, okay? And you can look at that under a magnifying glass or a microscope. And actually, you could use the microscope that you use for your hardness tester for your Lee unit. So you can literally use this to look at this. Also, another thing too, having a loop, all right? Let me see if I can get my loop out here. I have a 220 power loop in here. Well, that's one thing I don't like about this toolbox, man. I'm always pawing through stuff all the way to the bottom. Anyway, we're going to skip that part. But under a loop, you can see that forward edge right there, this forward edge. Under a loop, you can, once you clean that up, you can see the actual breaking angle the breakaway angle and the sear engagement angle. It's not cut completely square. It has a breakaway angle that broke that edge over, so that the sear actually rolls away. Well, I don't want to say rolls away. It actually has, it doesn't have a sharp edge against the hammer hooks when it releases, okay? And it makes your hammer hooks last a lot longer, and it also makes the sear engagement last a lot longer, which is going to make your trigger last a lot longer, okay? And you can actually, under a loop, you can look and you can see the little hash marks for the flatness that goes across this. And those little hash marks right there, you'll see that as you stone it, okay? There's a stoning fixture that I have as well that you can set up the angles that you need for that. But that's advanced, and I'm not even going to go into that on this level. That is completely up to the person. If you want to explore that stuff, buy books, watch other videos, get some ideas about what you're doing before you start messing with these, okay? However, I wanted to go into an old trick, okay? Now, remember what I was bringing up about surface area? Okay, you got your surface area between your sear and your hammer hooks, okay? Some guys would actually thin their hammer hooks down, okay? And they would thin these down so where there wasn't as much surface area between here and the engagement on the sear. That was one thing that they used to do, is they used to sit there and they would thin the inside area of this out so that those hammer hooks would be thinner and they wouldn't be as wide. That was one thing that some gunsmiths did, okay? That was a trick. Another trick, okay? Let me get the old hammer out, get the old trigger out, okay? This is the old trigger. This is the old trigger for the RO. This is the one I took out. Now, as you know, okay, the trigger moves back and forth in this area right here that comes out, you know, this opening here in the frame, okay? Now, what I'm talking about is surface area here, okay? That top and that bottom there, the bottom is going to make contact with the bottom of the trigger guard on that in this little alley they've cut right here. So you got contact here, and you have or contact here. It all depends on where you're putting your finger is on the trigger. All right. So what old school gunsmiths would do, all right, is that on the bottom of the trigger and on the top of the trigger, they would stone these down so where they had, you know, quite a bit of play. You know, well, I want to say quite a bit of play. You wouldn't be able to notice it if you looked at it, unless you really looked at it. But they would stone that down so they had enough room. And what they would do is they'd drill a small hole on the top and the bottom, and they would install pins, okay, hardened steel pins or brass pins on the top and the bottom of the trigger shoe. And then they would stone those down, okay, so where they had just enough, you know, just enough room to fit in that alleyway, okay? And instead of having all this area dragging through that area, okay, instead of having that all dragging through, you know, the top and the bottom of this area right here, the raceway on the top and the bottom, they would only have that one head of a pin moving there, okay? And that reduces your felt, you know, your felt resistance, okay, on the trigger, all right? You had less surface area making contact, so therefore you had less resistance as you're pulling the trigger, because you're not pulling the trigger across all this area anymore, just the head of a pin. So that's one of the things they used to do. Another thing that they used to do as well is that the bow, okay, the bow goes through, you know, the magazine well, okay, and what they would do is they would cut out, you know, about up to about the point of my fingernail right there. They would cut this area out, okay, and they would smooth this, butter smooth, and that way they would lighten this bow, but they would also reduce the fact that this area here was making contact with the raceway that's in the magazine well, okay, so the trigger could move back and forth, okay. Trigger can move back and forth, and it wouldn't be rubbing here on the bottom anymore. You don't have a contact area up here on the stirrup and here, and properly suspended with that little pin right there. This wouldn't even touch, okay? We're talking guys that would just, they would mess like with something like this for a whole day or 2 days or 3 days or even a week trying to perfect it, okay? That way you could get a 4.5 or a 5 pound trigger on these. It would pick it up. It would pick up 4.5 pounds on an NRA weight. But it didn't feel like it. It didn't feel like that at all. I mean, it would just be like snap. I mean, you would swear that was a two pound trigger. It just didn't feel like it because all of that area and that surface area of drag has been reduced. All you have is pin pressure that pushes against the spring pressure, pushing against the bottom of the stirrup and the hammer, and then breaking that. And that's the only surface area in there, in that whole raceway that's going to make contact, is the very forward part of the stirrup, and maybe just a small amount, but those pins, it would be riding on those pins. Like I said earlier about your relationship, see if I can do this and illustrate this properly. I'm kind of flying by wire here. Okay. Now, what I was telling you earlier about the hammer and sear engagement, okay? What I was telling you earlier, the way that the stirrup, okay, goes against the disconnector, when it trips that, okay, when it trips that area right there and releases the hammer, all right, you gotta have a little bit of play there so that these two areas here don't grind. That's what I was talking about earlier. That's the reason why you gotta back that screw when you back the screw off and then the hammer falls. You gotta go a little bit more because that little nub right there, okay, is going to make contact with your magazine release. Okay, that's where that pin is going to make contact back there. So anyway, I'll tell you, when it comes to a 45, there's a lot of different brands out there available. Some of them better than others. I think with CNC machining that we have nowadays, it's a lot better than it used to be as far as parts. But the main deal, okay, the main thing that you're looking for in a 45, okay, is the relationship of these two pins. Those are very important. Those have to be drilled absolutely straight. That's the most critical area on a 45 as far as placement of the holes, these bored out holes here. In fact, on custom guns, these holes are actually undersized, and then the pistol smith will hand fit those very precisely. He has a fixture, and he'll actually stone those, okay, to the proper relationship, so that the bearing surfaces are parallel and that the hammer hooks and the sear are perfect. And that's what this is all about, okay? Getting that relationship. This right here and this right here, these are perfectly aligned. That's what this block is about. All right? Here's another thing too. Price-wise, I think this is a best buy. These RO pistols are really, you're getting a lot of pistol for your money. Another pistol out there, I'm not a big fan, okay, I'm not a huge fan, is Rock Island. Okay, Rock Island is budgetly priced. It's, and their pistols, from what I've seen, okay, from what I've seen, they seem to be good pistols, okay? And I know that I'll get some fans that are going to go ahead and write in and say, I have a Rock Island and it's this and it's that and it's great and it's wonderful and, you know, it shoots just as good as an Ed Brown that my buddy has or whatever. Well, that's great. And I'm not going to argue with you. Fantastic, man. I'm happy for you. I am. You know, really. And I'm going to leave it at that. Okay? You know, there's no sense of arguing with people when they talk about what they bought and what they like. If they bought it and they like it and they think they get the use out of it that they want, don't argue with them. You know, don't argue. And if they show you nice, tight results that they're getting with it, hey, that's all better. You bet. Fantastic, man. You know, I'm glad that worked for you. I'm glad that you got lucky, or I'm glad that whoever put that pistol together used their expertise to do that. That's fantastic. However, the metallurgy, I believe that's in the Springfield, is better than what you're going to get in the Rock Islands. The Rock Islands, I know they have a certain type of steel and, you know, the forge that they use. However, you know, Springfield Armory pays a lot of money to make sure that their steel content, even though that these frames and slides, they're casted and they're manufactured in Brazil, okay? But Springfield Armory also puts a lot of money in to make sure that the metallurgy in these pistols and these steels are exact, okay? And I would say that the United States is the best about that, okay? That as far as scientifically, as far as our metallurgy goes, I think the United States is the best at having the standards of what they call, you know, certain grades of steel or stainless steel. We just have better steel here. And in Europe is the same way. European products seem to be made out of very good steel as well. If you have a Rock Island, I'm not putting it down. I'm not putting it down at all. Not at all. Go out, shoot it up, shoot millions of rounds. Go out there and have a good time with it. Wear it out. But this RO is a really good pistol for the money. It's about the closest thing you're going to get to a DCM pistol. You know, minus the beaver tail grip safety and a spur hammer. This is and the extended, you know, safety. If you had a standard safety and a standard, you know, the standard grip safety and a spur hammer, this is exactly what you would see as a military pistol, and you know, with a national match cart barrel and a national match barrel bushing fitted. And they also fit the slide a little bit, you know, that sort of thing. But those pistols are built off of old 45s. Just like Bob Chow, his pistols were mostly old GI pistols. That's how he made his money. He would make match guns out of them. But anyway, I wanted to share that little bit with you. Just make sure that you don't get drag in between your sear and your hammer hooks. And the way you do that is you turn it a little bit past the point that the trigger broke. And that'll give you enough clearance there where you won't, those two surface areas won't grind on each other. And, you know, I mean, it's not that hard. If you got an old trigger or something like that, you might want to, you know, sand a little bit down, experiment a little bit, drill a hole in there, and then install a pin, and then smooth that pin out. You could go ahead and take a Dremel tool, and then thin this area out, you know, start at about here, okay? And then thin this area out so you don't have drag on the bottom of the bow as far as the raceway, and smooth these out, butter smooth, and see if you can lighten up your trigger. You know, it won't lighten it in the way of pounds. It'll lighten it in the way of the feel. You just won't. I mean, it will just like snap. I mean, you won't feel it. You won't feel that resistance of the surface areas making contact, and that's the main thing. So anyway, this Thorax, I wanted to throw that out there. This is kind of like a continuation of what I did this morning, and so that's about all I got. And we'll catch you in the next video. Thanks for watching.